Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't heard from him, so I thought that was a good sign because he wasn't, he wasn't calling to cancel. So I thought it was a good sign, but he may be so distracted.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm looking up here and he just 11 minutes ago, he just posted something. Call him. He needs to come. He posted.
I'm going to send him a text. Rick.
And he's posted something about cats. So, I'm not lying to you. Come on, Rick.
Where are you?
Oh, Lord. He might be gone by now because he's posting stuff about cats. A cat that was missing since 2018, California mudslide. They found him. That's the last post 11 minutes ago. So
that has been missing since 2018.
Yeah, 2018's mudslide. It was found alive. That's his last post 12 minutes ago. So he needs, yeah.
So he's not worrying about the election, about the impeachment.
Well, I'm going to write a little comment. Hi, Rick.
All right, while you do that,
we are waiting for you.
These pages. And yeah. So, all right. I don't know that I can't tell on Zoom. I can't tell on Zoom if we have anybody watching.
Oh. So we can have we can have warriors and don't even know it.
Yeah.
Oh.
But if we do, give us a few minutes. We're looking for our third co-host. And here he is.
Oh, good. I just sent him a message.
Yeah.
Hey there.
Sorry about that. I couldn't figure out where was the link again. How's everybody? Happy New Year.
Yeah, you know what? It moves around. It's some Facebook thing that's going on. So, there are those tabs at the top of the page.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, I think it's usually showing up under announcements, but also if you go to your notifications, I'm posting a message that says the chat room is open.
Yeah, but I couldn't find it.
Like,
the notification itself, I saw it the other day and I was browsing. I was like,
but the notification that says the chat room is open, I post that 15 minutes before 6 o'clock, 5:45. So, and that should take you to the link.
Yeah, I didn't get it. So strange.
Okay, so that's Facebook's stuff.
Yeah, I think they're playing with the algorithm a lot right now.
Yeah, they got a lot going on.
Sorry for my hair, but pandemic. Well, no, 2021 saw 2020 ending. I was like,
well, look at mine. So
I'm gonna be the original one. 3 new coronavirus. A coup in America. Russia.
And Venita's trying to hide her hair.
Yeah, see, I have to wear hats for the sun, so I just, you don't see my stuff. Okay, Rick, brush that side down over here.
I can't.
Yeah.
I'll be back. I have an idea.
It's not bothering me.
No, but we don't want him to look crazy.
Oh man.
The last cat post didn't help. You know? In the midst of everything, you got my cats.
Yeah.
Done.
See, there you go.
So you gonna leave me being the only one looking hair crazy today.
I love your hair. I love how they are. No, you should keep them that way. It's fiery, you know. I really like it. You look a little bit like an 80s pop star right now. You know,
Thank you.
like Cyndi Lauper and all these girls that have all these. My sister actually had a huge brushing. I mean, it was a time where people's hair were incredible.
Yeah, a form of self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So we have been a long time from talking about our book, The Coming Plague, by Laurie Garrett, The Coming Plague, A World Out of Balance. And so much has been going on in the world since we last met. Which was early December, I think. So we've gone through all the holidays. We've lived through an insurrection. We've seen the president impeached. And Venita and I were just talking about how it feels like forever.
But you know, it's a great thing. Now I understand why, you know, after wars, people were barely 50, wrote memoirs. Time slows down a lot when you have catastrophic events, I think. So you have 40-year-olds and you have they were writing memoirs. You're 40.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, anyone who, you know, any small child who has lived through the Trump presidency.
Civic class. So, can somebody explain the branches of power? QAnon? Boogaloo? No, that's not it, Josh.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, he just keeps us going from one catastrophe, one scandal to the next. And you get whiplash trying to keep up with it all. I mean, we hadn't had time to digest the president of the United States calling up election officials in Georgia to strong arm them. You know, before we were into this whole insurrection thing.
This is where, you know, I'm surprised because, you know, I looked at all the Twitter feeds of all the people who were arrested from the beginning, 2010, 2012 to now. And the guy with the t-shirt who chased after the cop was diverting the crowd. You look at his early tweets, it's, hey, bought a new charger. It broke. Bad quality. He had a very nice shirt. He looked like a nice kid. And I'm thinking there's a real crisis of masculinity in America because a lot of these guys used to be Obama voters or whatnot. And it's like they're looking at an age where I did that when I was in my early 20s, late teens, you know, to be like, hey, I'm going to fight everybody. And, you know, do mixed martial arts and stuff. But they get there around 35. And I think it's because I call us the loser generation. We were raised with the same values as your generation, which is, oh, if you do the right thing, you'll get money, you'll get a house, you'll get a wife, whatever. Which is, the problem is that during that time, our generation became the minimum wage generation. Big diplomas, big debt, working at McDonald's for 5 years. And a lot of people say we started working in 2008 when there was a crisis, so we got those minimum. I got those for about 10 years. I lived under a poverty line for more than 10 years. Then I got a break. I'm in an industry that doesn't know the crisis, but everybody else who got a break, they lost everything again. So I think it's strange to see what really happened in Nazi Germany. in the 20s and 30s, the same broken generation from the First World War and the different crises they got from America with capitalism, not communism, which is strange. It's always capitalism that leads to that, but they always accuse commies.
Right, right. Well, it's
So
with the big lie.
I'm not excusing them, but I'm trying to understand how we go from a kid who talks about the charger and I got my new iPhone, look, a selfie, to they're sucking the blood out of children in the multidimensional travels, and we need to kill every single representative. How do you go from this to that in 5 years?
Yeah, because it's more than 5 years, and I do hope that we choose to read another book together. And I told Venita, I'm really feeling like I want to read some stuff on authoritarianism or something. But there was one book. There's a scholar, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who has a fairly recent book out. Title starts with "Strong Men." And I was listening to her on a podcast recently, and she was talking about that issue of toxic masculinity. But there are a lot of factors, and there are a lot of pundits and writers and thinkers and scholars who are producing material right now that kind of traces the lineage of how we got here. I was listening to Michael Moore's podcast today, where he interviewed, the guy's name is Daryl Johnson, and he was working at the Department of Homeland Security in 2009 and producing threat assessments. And he's the author of an assessment that was documenting the seriousness of this right-wing terror, domestic terrorism threat. And apparently the report got leaked, and then the right wing attacked him vociferously. And then Obama backed down from publishing it. And then this Daryl Johnson got fired, but it's more than 5 years. It's, that goes back like 12 years. But even if you go back to Reaganism, we've been on a steady course leading us to this day.
But there's one thing, however, that's very shocking, is that when I say 5 years, talk about the greater force of that insurrection, which were people in their mid-30s. So this is a generation that grew up with the Cosby Show and thought it was anti-racist.
They look like elderly to me.
Oh no, I'm talking. Think about the Auschwitz guys, all these guys. Yeah, they're old school. They've been around. You're right for longer. But you look at the guy who stole the speaker's pulpit. He's 36. The guy with the shirt, "We will not back down," he's 37. And so on and so on. And they're all in their mid-30s. And they're what we call the Gamergate generation, which was all these so-called nerds that were cool in the early 2010s that literally became radicalized through different means. And originally was the meme culture, it's the ironic Nazi. The thing with the ironic Nazi, it's obvious when it's really ironic, like Monty Python or Key and Peele showing a Nazi and they make a joke. But it became more about a way of trolling so-called libs. And you look at where did they gather? They gather around the questions of homosexual marriage, transgender people, gender criticism of gender positions. They agglomerated around these topics. So you look at Steve Chowder, you look at Mike Cernovich, that living, breathing piece of, you look at Ben Shapiro. It's always about women. It's always about LGBTQA plus people, that they use that to crystallize everybody from different political or horizons, even Obama voters, to become insane with Trump. And to me, it says a lot. A lot of guys, it's like a lot of people in my generation at my age are attracted attracted to younger women. I'm not. The reason is I had younger women when I was younger. They didn't. So they feel they lost their teenage years and they have a lot of hate. They need somebody to be, and I don't want to call them terrorists. I think it's mischaracterizing what happened, because with the cops letting them in, the president not sending in the, of course, National Guard, he gives the order and trying to pressure them. It's a coup. It's not an insurrection itself. It's literally a coup d'etat. It is a government-run attempt at destroying a regime to replace it with another. They're no longer terrorists. And this is where it's dangerous.
And it's not over, right?
But if cops, this is my worry. If somebody starts shooting and when does it become a civil war? Does it become a civil war at the first bullet? Because if they shoot at them, and they'll have to, if they try to enter by force, then they'll have justification in a way like, hey, we're defending ourselves and so on. And it never ends.
No, we are in very scary times right now, because this was clearly an inside job, and
Part inside, part, I don't think everybody was organized, but clearly listen, if they put metal detectors in front of Congress, they know. They've got information that there's.
They were able to walk directly to Jim Clyburn's private,
secure, anonymous
office.
Yeah, I know. That means they got the information. Yeah.
Yeah. But it goes very deep, and we're talking about it and dealing with it for a long time. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we call the precise moment when a civil war begins, and and I don't know how you, as a citizen, are supposed to protect yourself or feel secure when it's the people in uniforms, but I mean, so much of this is what Black folks have been saying all along, So apparently we don't know how to get the message across.
No, the idea is that it's always because of racism. And people don't understand one thing. Racism is one of the manifestations of tyranny.
Yeah.
Tyranny goes with all of them, not just racism. But people, it's they came for the Jews. I didn't say anything. Then they came for me. The thing is that shows how deep the racism is in the white population in America, because deep down they don't consider Black people human, because otherwise they would have immediate empathy with, wait, why do you touch that guy like that? You're not allowed to,
Yeah.
So, well, that's what I've always said, that we're fighting for our human rights. So when I see these folks out here, and the white women in particular, fighting for their equal rights, we don't have the same agenda. And that's why I don't understand. It's like, why don't you go home, what I'm saying, and do your thing, because we don't have the same agenda. I have to get human rights before I can get any other kind of right. And they out there talking about, I want equal rights. Well, okay, girl, I'm with that too. But right now, this is what I'm doing. And when I say that, I've actually been met with all kinds of resistance to that statement.
You're exaggerating,
which is true,
right? You're exaggerating.
Well,
that's what they say, right?
Well, you exaggerate. Well, I don't think it wasn't like he was exaggerating. It's just like sometimes I met with silence.
Very courageous. Very brave. Good conversation. Thank you.
Right, which is even worse to me. It's just met with silence.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. And I'm like, I'm speaking plain English. So this is pretty heavy, but I'm not, I think I was talking to someone today, and I'm like, I really didn't flinch when I was watching it, because the only difference with the so-called coup at the White House is that usually it's me in one of these cities, in one of these towns, in the middle of the green, hanging from a tree with the bomb. Yeah. So for me, it was just like, okay, well, they're at it again.
But this is the first time. This is why I talk about coup. Usually in the past, white power was confident that the federal government, as well as state authorities, would serve their desires. This is the first time they're not doing it. What do you mean Detroit voted? But that was illegal. You know how Black people are. probably their dead people voted with them. Oh, you're not overturning the election. Wait a second. That's the first time the government says, "Nah, guys, we're kind of stuck. It's like really legal." So to them, it's unacceptable. So that they try to overthrow the structure of the federal government, which for whatever reason, it's not perfect, but it's the only right now institutional wall against certain rules that they try to implement, like segregation. We can't forget that the federal government in the 60s and 70s sent the National Guard to allow civil rights to be implemented, which was brave in the 60s. But today they didn't even send the National Guard to protect democracy. What I'm saying is that there's been a very big shift. There were people who believed that racism was a plague in the 60s. We don't have these people anymore. Everybody justifies racism. Oh, there's always a reason. People, you have a conversation, yeah, there's racism, but not everybody is that bad. They never talk about the real problem. They always trying to divert. So
Yeah, and
Well,
I'm gonna get us diverted onto the topic at hand, but I just want to say one more thing, and you could say one more thing, Venita.
oh, I'm done.
I think I've suggested that everybody watch The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu for a good vision of where this thing could go if it's really allowed to get out of hand. And also the other good series is Leah Remini's Scientology. Because whether these people are into Scientology specifically or not, it gives you a good kind of insight into how cults operate and some of the strategies that they use. So like even for example, today to try to a better example is Mike Pence. How do you go back to work after your boss has sent the hit squad after you? How do you do that?
Easy. Mike Pence figured, look, I have taken this ass whooping for almost 4 years. I'm almost at the finish line. And not just that. Now today, of course, we seen what happened and we have to have the trial and all that happy stuff. But Mike Pence is probably thinking it's a win-win situation. If I just hold in here a few more minutes and they say he can not run for any office again ever in life, it's smooth sailing for me. So I'm gonna be honest with you. If I look, I'm thinking about his psychology, not mine, Rick. Because if you sat there and took that ass whooping for 4 years almost, I don't know if I would give up towards the end. It's like you might threaten my life, but I'm gonna try to hang in here because they'll take one for the team. They will take that chance.
And also, there's another thing I think that people need to realize. First of all, even the 25th Amendment would take as long because there are 4 days, and it's about incapacity. So in the letter Pence wrote, there's actually something right, is that there's a risk that if he removes him from office because he says he's insane, if there's afterwards, and I know Trump, he would go to a doctor, say he's not insane. They would go to the Supreme Court, and legally would mean the 25th would have been illegal. So I think Pence wants and he probably, here's the trick, is that they look like they're at odds, but I'm sure Pelosi and McConnell agreed behind closed doors to pretend Pence couldn't invoke the 25th that they can impeach and actually remove him for office for good forever, after it's all over. And also you keep the 25th as a weapon until it's over. So that if he touches the nuclear codes, but I'm not sure. Was the letter written by his lawyer thinking like I would, or is it Pence being a coward trying to find an official legal excuse?
It could be. But once again, Rick, as Michelle and I discussed before, what people don't understand, even when it comes to relationships, when you see one, you see the other because you're attracted to people that marry you. So when you see Donald Trump, you see Pence. They're one and the same, except the one I find might be even more dangerous is the one Pence, the quiet one in the background, that's easing around. You understand what I'm saying? Donald, even with his crazy, he will tell you his crazy. You know exactly what he's going to do every time. Pence, on the other hand.
What worries me is people forget that the reason why Hitler, after his attempted coup in München in 24, came back stronger is that then he started surrounding himself with extremely competent men who had PhDs in physics, maths, were hateful, who fought objectively understanding the world, whatever, philosophers, whatnot. What happens when somebody in America, and I'm sure somebody who watched that saying, I'm not stupid like Donald. I can probably gather these forces for my own benefit. And this will be very dangerous. You're right. The silent, quiet, politically correct Trump will be our downfall.
That's what I'm telling you. And with that Bible, the evangelist too, with that Bible in his hand.
We're gonna be at this. We're gonna be at this for a long time. But at least the mask has come off a little bit.
But people forget, Michelle. How many times did it go off?
I think that we are at risk right now, really, of full-blown fight in the streets, civil war, where you're not going to be able to forget because you're not going to be safe walking down the street, But it may not just be the situation that Black people have been dealing with, for a long time, where somebody gets picked off over here, somebody gets picked off over there, But I don't think we're going to forget this as easily as we normally forget things. I don't know.
I hope so.
I mean, I'm saying that, but at the same time, I haven't seen the level of outrage, particularly among the Republican Congress people, to the coup attempt.
But that's not reassuring. It means that it takes a bullet to their neck to understand the danger. You know what I mean? And this is terrible because if they didn't figure out it was a problem when he delivered to a Russian agent within the White House the name of a Mossad double agent in Syria, it was his first. Do you realize from a purely political standpoint, strategic standpoint, he wasn't impeached in 2017 when he did that. Obama would have suggested somebody was in Syria to Putin, he would have been impeached the morning after.
Yeah.
So again, I think the Black experience is still very distinct because the difference is that when it happens to us, there's the army being sent.
The cult, if you think about this from a cult perspective, or you think about it from how the mafia, operates, then we don't really even know particular threat that individual Congress people have been under to just try to do the right thing. And we know courage, generally speaking, is in short supply. So, if you think about that call that Donald made to Raffensperger in Georgia.
That's the mob.
The mob. He might as well have said, I got a bullet to your first son's, neck.
Hey,
now
how's your
you're gonna
family?
find me 11,080 votes.
Is your son still in high school? Right. Your son's in high school. Good man, huh? Good man. The threats, the veiled threats.
Yes, that's who we're talking about. So, anyway, let's do book group. So welcome everyone to Reading for Change, a collective journey. And we are in cluster 1. This is the first book that we are reading together. It's a big book. It seems like we've been reading it forever and we're not done. Anyway, we are back. We've been on a break for about a month, and so we are back. And you can learn more about us on YouTube or Facebook under the name Reading for Change. My name's Michelle Odom. I am located here in Brooklyn, New York, and my co-hosts are Venita.
Joining you from Cromwell, Connecticut. My name is Venita. This is my ticket.
All right. And Rick.
And Rick, joining you from Queens, New York.
Ooh. All right. Who feels like reading the intro?
Rick.
Yeah, I had a nap today, so I feel energized. So chapter 12, feminine hygiene as debated mostly by men, toxic shock syndrome of the coming plague, newly emerging diseases in the world out of balance by Laurie Garrett, follows a path of wrong turns that end with the discovery of a new strain of staph, Staphylococcus aureus infection, one that plagues menstruating women as well as boys, girls, and men. The human search for a solution to the issue of female bleeding led to the invention of Tampax and other brands of superabsorbent tampons. As a spike in toxic shock syndrome among menstruating women occurred in the 1970s, coinciding with increased competition in the tampon industry, the nation engaged in debate over the cause of this mysterious condition for over a decade. Scientists initially suspected the unregulated chemical-laden superabsorbent tampons, which were soaked in such lovely substances as polyurethane, carboxymethyl cellulose. When did I agree to read that? A chemical source of sugar, and asbestos, even though TSS was simultaneously observed in boy and girl children. One doctor, Patrick Schilevert, a maverick UCLA University of Minnesota medical school scientist, refused to go along with the dominant thinking of the time. Through his experiments, Dr. Schilevert discovered a new strain of the highly contagious, fast-growing, antibiotic-resistant, and sometimes deadly staph bacteria dubbed TSST1, toxic shock syndrome toxin number 1, with us to this day. TSST1 is clearly associated with surgery, tampon use, and skin injuries. In laboratory tests, TSST1 and 5 other toxins extracted from various staph strains proved to be the most potent T-cell stimulators ever found. Overstimulation could lead to wasting syndrome, anorexia, and chronic overproduction of key immune system chemicals. This drastic immunological effect resulted in TSST1's designation as a super antigen, an extraordinarily potent immune system stimulator capable of producing a cascade of activities within the system. Dr. Michael Osterholm, Minnesota state epidemiologist too, was conducting research that called CDC findings into question. Both doctors found autoimmune diseases in some TSS survivors, including lupus, appearing within weeks of recovery from TSS. Japanese pediatrician Dr. Tomisaku Kawasaki also saw a strange pattern in children involving staph, including lost fingers and toes, now known as Kawasaki syndrome. On the upside, with intervention by consumer advocate Ralph Nader, the CDC issued its first tampon regulations in October 1980. However, the new strain emerged. Its debut elicited a strong immune response. The multi-million-dollar industry was shaken, menstruating women were terrified, scientists feuded, and the credibility of 2 U.S. federal agencies, the FDA and the CDC, was challenged.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Venita, you want to start us off?
Key point and standard questions.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
What, if anything, did I learn in this week's readings? What I found most interesting, and that's number 2, is a lot of information we did not know at that time, and that was, of course, during my era. I didn't know that males had toxic shock syndrome, because the assumption was that tampons were controlled, were the reason why we had them. Of course, I don't think men wear tampons, but at that time, well, all right. At that time, I didn't know of any. So, and no one ever even talked about that. No one even mentioned it males. So that's what I found most interesting about this
Yeah.
toxic shock syndrome, is that males also have it.
Yeah, that was shocking to me too,
Was a
because
shock? Yeah.
I remember the tampon scare,
Yeah, of course.
which actually caused me to stop using tampons, but I did not get the memo that it wasn't exactly the tampons that was the problem. So
Yes. And even then, they suggested that you did not wear the super absorbency. I do remember that specifically when they
yeah,
said, okay. And they tried to track a few things and put out a couple more statements. Okay, wear the regular ones, don't wear the super absorbency. And I remember that. So some women elected just to go, you wear the regular ones. But that was just interesting. I didn't know males.
yeah, no, I didn't know males, got TSST either. Yeah, thank you. Rick, anything?
Uh, that's an interesting. When I read the book, I recognized doesn't talk about it. There's a concept in medicine called masquerade syndrome, because you have a certain set of symptoms in a very specific population over another one. Like the other one are minor. It's such a minority that you don't see them, and something masquerades as a disease without being that disease. So, for example, COVID masqueraded as the flu. And masquerade syndrome is as psychological as it is objective. Objective in the sense the symptoms look alike, but they're subjective in the sense that the doctors and the nurses and everybody else cannot move away from the paradigm they had at first.
Mhm.
And this is typically masquerade syndrome because instead of thinking, wait, maybe tampons are revealing a certain pathogen and favoring its appearance rather than being the cause of the toxic shock syndrome. What I found very shocking, and that shows a lot of problems here, is that a lot of scientists, except those scientists we talked about, didn't realize they didn't have a pathogen to explain this. How can it be? How can a tampon or chemical cause a toxic shock? Toxic means there's an infection.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's a chemical attack. It's bleach you drink.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows how it was thought as. I think the book doesn't say it, but deep down, I think it's a little bit like the same thing. Like anything that regards women reproductive rights, um, it's not a need. So you don't need tampons.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you wear them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a insensitive thinking of, it's not important.
Mm-hmm.
And so that all of those go in hand, and to this day, the reason why girls and boys had it too is because it's a pathogen, and tampons should have allowed us to reveal maybe something we had not noticed in the past, and that explained why people were losing limbs or dying. But the whole thing, women using tampons, which meant, oh, you're using tampons like you're using the pill, right? Oh, I see. In the 60s, 70s, to this day, this idea that if a woman takes care of her reproductive health, she's you hear it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the 2010s, remember all those officials that said, well, you can't be pregnant if you're raped because you can only get pregnant if you consent. It's a psychological
Oh,
thing. That was you remember that
I
Republican
remember
so-called
that.
doctor? You're
I
like,
remember that.
what? That's not how it works.
I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. Like, who says that?
It's like
Who thinks
women are
that?
just psychological. If you don't want it, it won't happen. But us, man, if we don't want it, it will happen to us regardless. Like we can't. You have superpowers, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
along that same line, Rick, and I think I want to read question 12 because
So,
I too was shocked that they went down this rabbit hole. When you have something like Koch's postulate to guide the way, I'm going to read question 12.
Okay.
Having isolated the toxin and shown that it produced disease in animals, Schliebert set out to prove Koch's postulate. Named after 1905 Nobel laureate Robert Koch, the postulate was a statement of the experimental evidence required to establish the causal relationship between a given microbe and a particular disease. To prove that an organism or agent actually caused a disease, Koch, who discovered the cause of tuberculosis, said a scientist had to identify the presence of the agent in every case of the disease, isolate the organism, and grow it or its toxin in the lab, show that the lab-grown sample caused the disease when it was injected into animals, and then re-isolate the organism or toxin from the ailing lab animals. So my questions are, how sensible is this? How does the scientific process of proving causality differ from linking cause and effect in the social science world? And with Koch's postulate to guide them, why would scientists ever have controversy over the cause of a disease?
Well, Rick, why do you think the scientists would have controversy
That was actually
over
my
the cause of disease?
that was actually my 2-year 2 memoirs in philosophy that I got my degree were on that, epistemology and errors, falsehoods, mistakes. Are they really mistakes, etc.? How does a scientist? Here's a real mind-blowing problem. It's not how do scientists know something is true. It's how do scientists know something is not true. It's way more complicated. And it's important because when a theory fails through an experiment, what in the theory is wrong, you don't necessarily know. You just know it failed. The theory failed to be proven again in the experimental world. And with the disease, the whole Koch postulate is brilliant. And that's why he got the Nobel Prize, because it's the fourth step that's the most important. The fourth step proves that the end pathogen is the same as the initial pathogen. So you can't say that the animal already had the disease. And it's different from the pathogen you develop. So the fourth step is where he got the Nobel Prize. And the thing is, these steps are interesting, but here's the problem with Koch's postulate. We are not just sick with one pathogen at the same time. If you have COVID and the flu at the same time, which is now possible, we know through certain case reports, which one is responsible for your pneumonia? And this is where it becomes complicated, especially with HIV. If people had staph because of AIDS, was the staph causing the autoimmune disease, or was it another agent that nobody had ever heard about? So when you're a doctor, like, it's probably something we heard about. Not a single doctor out there wants to come out and say, hey, I found I think something that could destroy our species. It's like UFOs and airplane pilots, when they see them, they don't report them because So it's a difficult world, but I think in that case they didn't even apply the Koch postulate at all. They just said it's a chemical. What? So use that chemical in mice. They didn't. Here's the horrible story behind what happened, in my opinion, is that they didn't even do the experiments. They already had the response. Yeah, it's women using tampons, and they're so disgusting. They keep them for 4 days. That was what it meant, because you don't get a shock if you keep your tampon just 1 day. You get it if you forget about it 5-6 days. Yes.
Yeah.
Like if I forget something anywhere in my body for 5-6 days, I'm gonna have a toxic shock syndrome.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That was another suggestion that was made then, is to make sure they're changed regularly. I remember that also.
But like everything, like your pants, like if you wear the same underwear for 2 weeks, trust me, you will get fungi and other pathogens. It's just logical, but
I'll
women
take
weren't
your
doing
word
that.
for it.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, concentration camps. That's we have stories of people who couldn't change clothes and new pathogens appear.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, no, it's but these guys were literally not caring.
Yeah.
And I think the whole idea was like AIDS is a punishment from God for people having sex.
Yeah.
Well, this is a punishment for women for not being part of the traditional society. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I feel
Mm-hmm.
All right, Rick. Well, see, I don't know about all that because see, that's why I didn't have toxic shock syndrome, I guess.
Yeah, but you know, for me, one of the other interesting aspects of this chapter was exposure to TSST1 and the subsequent and short presence of autoimmune disease. You know, I've got this rare autoimmune disease, and of course, the first thing I wanted to ask my doctor was, well, where does it come from? And so he says, well, we don't know.
They don't.
You know, and that's because I know there are so many possibilities. You know,
no. They always say
this is,
genetics, but genetics is a little bit like what used to be it's in your mind. They don't really
yeah.
know. But surely autoimmune diseases in so many women over the past years, and begs a question. What is going on? Is it the food? Is it the environment? Is it pollution? Is it stress? Is it there's a
Mhm.
genetic basis, but it doesn't mean it will be activated. So there's an environmental factor that activates autoimmune diseases. And they're talking about T cells.
Mhm.
T cells, where did so this I didn't know reading the book, but now I realize where it comes from. This horrible story about the toxic shock syndrome actually led to revolution in science and medicine over the past years. Immunosuppressants for cancer. So the problem in the past is that chemotherapy would attack your cells and you would become sick because your autoimmune system would fight back chemo. Like,
Mhm.
wait, we're fighting those cells are my cells. No, but they're sick. I don't care. I'll protect them till the end. It's a toxic relationship. Cells have with their autoimmune system in cancer. So what
Mhm.
they did is immunosuppressants allow the immune system to be like, hey, okay, we'll let you destroy these cells, we'll protect the other ones. So very few adverse events compared to the past and greater survival. And the way they go through that is it's inhibiting the T cell signal. T cells signal inflammation. So you find it in asthma, you find it in cancer, you find it different disease areas where inflammation is involved.
Uh-huh.
And so there's this suspicion that if we can understand the signaling with all the other biomarkers, we could cure any form of autoimmune disease or cancer. We're far from
Oh.
it. But so I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
it dated back to Schleifer.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
And
that's why I was interested in immunosuppressants, like prednisone. That's the purpose of taking prednisone. That's why
But
I take
there's
prednisone.
cardiovascular issues with prednisone, as you know,
Yeah.
when you take it for too
But
long.
well, I don't take high doses. I
Oh, good.
take 5 milligrams for maintenance.
Oh yeah,
Unless,
the maintenance
yeah,
therapy with
yeah,
hydroxy, right?
with hydroxychloroquine,
Yeah.
plaquenil also. But and that's just 5 milligrams. Sometimes I can go down to 3. But if you have a major flare up, you have to take large doses because it's an emergency. You're trying to
Yeah.
prevent it from inflammation attacking your liver, your lungs, your heart, your whatever, and
You ever got
kidneys.
rituximab, the
Mhm.
biologic? You ever got the infusion of rituximab? It's when
No,
it's so severe that they're like, let's try this. It's off label.
no. See that the good news is
Good.
there are many people that do have severe. I mean, you wouldn't
Yeah.
even imagine, and it's different for everyone. I did,
Nephritis,
yeah,
CNS. Yeah, I know nervous
right.
system attacks.
So that's what I said when they said it caused cases of lupus. It just simply means inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
Lupus, you can have a case of lupus from medication, but it's
Mm-hmm.
temporary. It really
I
is.
didn't
So
know
it's
that.
just,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. You can have a case of lupus from medication, certain medications, that cause sensitivity or reaction. And that reaction is lupus, SLE, synthetic. But as soon as you stop taking that medication, you will see that that will subside. That's not the danger. It's the chronic lupus that's the danger.
But,
Where your body's
I mean, not to interrupt you, but I don't know if you use tampons in the past, and but there might be. It's not a cause and effect thing. It's more a trigger. Like what I mean?
Yes. It could be, it's a trigger. It could be environmental. You can spray aerosol, air freshener.
Pesticides are linked to a lot of diseases we never talk about.
I'm saying something as simple as air freshener. Something as simple as air freshener. The chemical that's in air freshener could be anything. But I was just using that as a simple example that I see people do all the time. You can spray a household cleaner, Lysol spray.
That's one of the things too for me that comes out in this chapter that I found interesting. It's really a very clear example of the government just not really doing a good job of looking out for our interests. And this is before there was an all-out attack on the regulatory, environment.
Right.
But to find out that there were no regulations on tampons or soap.
But even with regulations, what does it mean?
That sentence that there's no more regulations on tampons than soap or hammers. And I'm like, what? There's no regulations on soap?
But even with regulations, what does it actually mean? If you look on the back of anything that you're using, it says, and this could happen. If you're going to use this cleaning product, make sure you have all your windows open. Make sure you're not in a contained area. Don't get it on you. After you read all that, that it's dangerous.
Those are kind of super.
I bought some electrical tape recently because it was red and it was pretty, and I thought I was going to do something decorative with it. From a dollar store. And then I got it home and I noticed the warning on the label. And it said it was for California residents, this warning. And it was telling you that use of this product can expose you to lead.
Yes.
I threw the dollar store tape away because that's the effect of the regulation. Maybe we don't have to warn New York residents, but this New York resident was happy to see the warning for California residents.
That's a strange thing. Every French person or British person that comes to America is baffled by what you sell in stores. It's prohibited in Europe. Over-the-counter drugs are prohibited. Most of them are like, what? Like methamphetamine, like seriously, like amphetamines over the counter. I mean, and it goes with products like in Europe, it always takes an hour to clean your home. Really, you got to scrub with the products they sell you there. Here, I don't scrub, but it smells really strong, very, very strong. And what's interesting is that, and that's what the EU, the CE means, is that they overprotect everybody. So, for example, asbestos is absolutely prohibited anywhere. And when they can remove it, they have to put a big A where it is so people can see it. What?
Can you imagine shoving asbestos up your pussy?
Well, I would disapprove of the practice. I would say it bears some risks.
It might be hard for you to get that image, but
we men, we understand that, because here's the thing that is very taboo in society is that I think a lot of women go with infections because a lot of men never treat theirs. So what? It's a pibble. No, it's not a pibble. It's a fungi. It's got to be contagious. Yeah.
Right.
You guys are like that. Seriously.
Right. Yeah, but asbestos is something that they were allowing.
Oh, everywhere.
Non-regulatory. Yeah, you're right. But tampons? I mean, That blew me away. That really blew me away.
I mean,
I could believe that. I wasn't really surprised at anything. It's called capitalism. They really don't care.
But
it's cheap.
it's because of this capitalism environment that we are now in the situation that we are in,
Of course.
COVID, where we have all these vaccines that have now been produced, and a lot of people want them, but a lot of people don't. Because a lot of people have real memories and real experiences and bone memory
Mhm.
of the kinds of things that this government has let go and the kinds of ways that capitalism has put profit above people. And, and so now we're in a situation where it would be good to get 70, 80, 90% of the population vaccinated, but
There's another thing we forget. And I'm thinking about the story that happened in France during Chernobyl. We're the only country in the world that stated that the cloud had never, ever touched our soil. We literally had a scientist going on television telling everybody from the government that the cloud had stopped at the Rhine River, because there was a phenomenon. And that cloud decided to go to Italy. And the joke back then was that the cloud will not infect France, because France is the country of human rights and the enlightenment of the world. Like, we were having fun over how arrogant we were. And it wasn't true. And we had about, all of a sudden, a 90% increase in thyroid cancer in France over the years, and people were dying one by one. And to this day, in certain regions in France, you have high radioactivity, especially in mushrooms. And the story is that a lot of people got cancer, and children included, because in France, the tradition is we go for mushrooms. We go grab mushrooms and eat them. We go to the pharmacist, says you can eat this one, you can't eat. Then we eat them, and that's how they got contaminated. But people believed it, even though it was absurd scientifically for anybody who had a level of high school in physics in France. But here's something psychological that works. People would rather believe they can control the disease. So if you tell them it's tampons, they throw away tampons. But if you tell them it's a new pathogen or a cloud we can't control, that's not good. People start to freak out, and the government just wants order. So, okay, women can wear, okay, you had toxic shock syndrome. Well, they're wearing tampons. It's a thing. It's a new thing. We'll get used to not having it anymore. And of course. So this is the big problem. And you see with COVID, they're trying desperately to find a reason that it doesn't exist, because it's easier. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, thank goodness for people like Dr. Sleeverd and who's the other one, Oberman or whatever his name was, Osterholm, who were brave enough, courageous enough, maverick enough to not go along, to not be pressured by the establishment. And and it's pretty scary stuff. Like, Dr. Rick Bright, who got fired, demoted, or whatever early on in the COVID crises, and now he's back on the scene as he's going to be something in the Biden administration. But he was always trying to tell us the truth from the beginning. And, if Biden had not been elected and this country had to endure another 4 years of the psychopath in chief, it's just.
I think you're optimistic. I don't think 4 years. We would have gone through 4 other years, maybe a year and a half before the nuclear Armageddon.
Yes. I mean, it just makes me feel so vulnerable that consumer beware, that as just a regular citizen, we're constantly trying to have to figure out what's true and what's not true. And, and while I certainly do not subscribe to the conspiracy theories and, the madness being spewed by these right wingers, there is a part of me that understands we've created this society where integrity doesn't count, truth doesn't count, even education doesn't count.
Nerd.
And, yeah, so now we're in this situation where people with very limited capacity are having to try to figure out this maze of conflicting information by people, many of whom do not have good intent.
Funny anecdote. So you were talking about how regulations are important, and it's a funny one because it's not based on medicine, you'll see, but for months I've been having problems in my back, my sciatica nerve, and I was like, but my pants look like they fit, but at the same time, like they don't fit. So I measure myself and I'm at 38, but all my pants are 33, 34.
Mhm.
I started looking on the internet. You know what? It's called vanity sizing. They're allowed to do that.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It's insane. So I don't know what pants I have to buy, and I wear the wrong pants for years, thinking, well, I'm a 34, even if it says 38.
Right.
It's not going to lead to anything problematic in the end, but it shows how they use. So now I know I'm a little fatter than I thought.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. In the past, I would see myself in the mirror as rather fit. Now I see myself as rather fat because of that change. So it shows how they it's the matrix. They change society for you, how you perceive it, literally.
Yes.
And I know it sounds crazy what I'm saying, but
it happens. No, it's for real. I remember years ago, I remember years ago, I was telling Michelle that I noticed that many years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I wore a 3-4. All of a sudden, I can't fit anything. Now, I haven't lost any weight. It was a solid 4. Because we used to have solid numbers when we grew up. They were like solid. They were not make-believe. If you wore 7, 8, you wore 3, that's what you wore. 12, that's what you wore.
Yeah.
And I look at it now, and they started, I remember back during the time when Oprah had lost a lot of weight. That was a good example. She came out on stage with this big wagon of fat to illustrate how much weight she had lost. I'm not an Oprah fan, mind you. She's a fabulous businesswoman, but I'm not an Oprah fan. And when she walked out there, she said, I am now in a size 5'6", I think it was, 7, 8. And I was like, now I know she has a lot of money, and where she shops, 7, 8, and where we probably shop, which is, we figure it's pretty still decent clothes, it's probably 8, 11, 12, 13, 14. But she said 7, 8. Was you 7, 8 that I don't exist? And that's when I first saw, that's when I first, started really noticing how they were doing the vanity sizings. It doesn't make sense. And then you go in the store, you start seeing it happening where you couldn't even buy clothes, because they were making a person that wears a 13, 14 think they were wearing a 9, 10. It's crazy.
But no,
it's off the charts.
Crazy.
Rick knows I'm not a small person. And even though, I did lose a bunch of weight, and now I've got my COVID-15 on top of it, but that caused me, when I lost a lot of weight, that caused me to have to, buy a bunch of new clothes. I have stuff in my wardrobe right now that I can wear, all of it, from a size 2 to a 14.
I don't mean to laugh.
No, it's true. I have the same here. I have pants 32 size that I can wear, and pants 36 I can barely fit.
Me too.
It makes sense. And I thought I just thought I was crooked. I was like, I have horrible legs, like that's why no pants fit. But think about it. What does that mean if the government's aware of that vanitasizing, to what extent can they, with data and information, change your perception?
Right. It's the dishonesty. And the thing about the Koch's postulate, and what you were saying about the complexity of of science, what I like about Koch's postulate compared to the social science world, social science is so complicated. Talk about not being able to say why something is happening or not happening. And it I think lends itself to this kind of easy explanation, big lie, kind of environment that we're in right now, because people do want answers. The answer that it's complicated. We're going to need 20 years to do a longitudinal study to come up with a maybe.
20 years, I'll order on Amazon. We're used to now. 20 years, I'll be dead. You're 10. I don't care. Everybody hates me.
Yeah. So the truth, the truth is being buried in this kind of quick fix environment that we're living in. But I tell you, it's buyer beware.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, don't worry about it. Our time is almost up. On a more pleasant note, Rick, our time is almost up. There's no need to worry. Okay, just keep on reading. And what question are we on now? Let's get this in before our time is really up.
I don't know. Why don't you choose one?
Okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh, Michelle.
We kind of talked around a lot
We did. We talked around like.
How about question 10?
Okay.
You wanna touch that up, Rick?
Sure.
Oh, you want some controversy here, huh?
No,
he always wants controversy.
2 TSS cases had surfaced during the fall among women who, afraid of getting the disease by using tampons, have switched to the Den Cheek alternative. Oh my God, no. Natural sponges. Don't. Despite feminism, does the menstrual cycle say something about women's place in the workforce?
So,
yeah, of course. That's always our excuse to dismiss your contribution. When we're angry, we're right. There's urgency. We need to deliver. When you're angry, they're having their periods.
Yeah. And when men are angry, and emotional, they send a lynch mob down to take over Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
We don't call that emotional.
The other excuse is, menopause, but there's a taboo in society. There is menopause that leads to craziness.
No, I believe that for sure. I have seen some people.
It's a hormonal thing of testosterone going down, and
yes,
men become emotional, so they become angry because we were punished when we cried. That's the big difference between women. As men, we were punished as children. Do not cry. Okay, so we replaced sadness with anger, and it doesn't help.
Right.
Yep.
Crying is good for you.
All day.
Yeah.
Be emotional.
You do it for therapy, just therapy. Go in the bathroom, look in the mirror. I do that once in a while. Have a good cry for about a good 5 minutes. That ugly kind, real ugly.
Yeah.
The world doesn't love me. The whole thing. The world doesn't love me. They don't appreciate me. Why am I here? What's my purpose? And then you wash your face or take a shower and you continue on with your day. And you feel a whole lot better. Really good. Yeah. Don't you feel better?
Yeah.
Feel much better.
Yeah.
Try it sometime, Rick. Try it.
Don't cry as much as I used to.
I cried in front of the Mandalorian yesterday. I cried this morning while reading an article about a woman who had died of COVID. No, I cried. I but that's the strange thing about me is that I used to cry a lot when I was a kid and still to this day. And people wanted to bully me, but they realized that I was raised in Asia and crying there is normal. It's encouraged when you're a child. But I knew how to fight. So it was an odd moment for them. The guy who was crying like a little just kicked our asses. One of my best memories.
Crying is encouraged in Asia.
They have a festival that gets all New York, Manhattanese crazy. In Japan, when the child is born, they bring it to the temple and they make it, and they all smile and send you pictures, and they make the toddlers cry with the priest. They cry, and they make them cry as hard, because they say if they cry a lot, that means they'll become stronger. They'll learn to never back down, to express themselves, and to be strong. The idea is that if you, in the Japanese Hagakure, the samurai book, they say that parents that frighten children are irresponsible because they'll make them cowards later instead of good warriors. So, for example, he says, when a child doesn't eat, don't tell them that the monster will come to get him because they'll make him a coward and we'll have to execute him as a traitor in his 20s. Samurai book. But if you tell him, well, it will make you stronger, it will allow you to, and try to explain, and no violence, you don't hit them. It's a samurai book. It tells them you never hit a child because you will teach them to be scared instead of courageous.
Well, it makes sense. It does make sense.
But just to train warriors to fanatics, by the way. Samurais were.
Well, I guess it makes sense. I guess it makes sense.
Explain. That's the idea. The monk in the book says a child needs explanation, not violence or fear. And he says reason. Children respond to reason, and he said, parent, when look at yourself and the child does not obey, maybe you are not rational, and the child knows it and plays with it.
That makes sense too.
Like, a lot of parents, like helicopter parents, their children are impossible. Ugh. My mother used to do one thing when I was impossible when I was 4, like, I want this toy, you want this toy? Okay, you work here now. And she would leave the store. So I of course put the toy back and went out after her.
You work here now. I like that one.
Like, you work here now, you'll buy yourself your own toy.
I like that. That's good.
On question 10, the other piece about question 10, kind of related to, what is it? Question 1, I think. No, not question 1. Question 4. Have you ever thought about how the menstrual cycle conflicts with economic necessity? And how do you imagine the banned females felt about being banned, in those cultures? And I guess kind of what was on my mind. It's been so long since I wrote these questions. But I guess what was on my mind was, just the relationship between health or self-care and economics. To picture these ancient women having to come up with creative ways to deal with the menstrual cycle, because society couldn't afford to have them out of the workforce for 4 days. And in this era that we're living in, where both essential and non-essential workers are being required to be in the workforce because society doesn't want to make the decision that getting this health thing under control is more important than the economic necessity. So it just, it just made me think about how there's always this tension and balance going on. And in the case of COVID, it's not just a matter of women's labor being withheld for a few days from the workforce, but men as well. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how we make the right decision, but it just feels to me like we're not making the right decisions.
I think for COVID, there's the inequalities are coming back because a lot of divorces and people are separating because men are still being men. They're not helping with the chores, and they freak out when there's noise while they're working versus women who, while their kids are around, are still working and trying to manage. So there's still this inequality. Women are still doing, and they're doing worse than before because in the past they had this break of work that that forced a husband or forced anybody in the household to organize themselves a little bit without her.
Mm-hmm.
But now she's always here.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that they're scared, the economists, that COVID will set back females' professional integration.
Oh, it will.
20 or 30 years back.
Oh, no doubt. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And also,
but husbands should be fine. I am in agreement with Nordic countries in Europe. In Finland, if a man doesn't do half of the chores in the house, equally separated or equitably, they get fined. Without a divorce, they get fined. Enough.
Why you're late, Rick? You should have told me about Finland.
Finland?
You should have told me about Finland's laws a long time ago.
But in Finland, on the other side, it goes extreme. But it becomes extreme. For example, Finland passed a law forcing men to sit on the bowl to pee. If they don't do it, a wife can complain and get them fined again. So it becomes extreme. Because here's my thing. Now that's too much, and not just for men, but for women. Because then we could say, women, you have to be standing now, otherwise you get fined. So it's I don't mind, but it's too much at that point. The government gets too much inside the couple. At that point, in my opinion. Wow.
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's a lot.
You know what I mean? It becomes a lot, but. Like Quebec did something great in the late 90s, early 2000s. The Supreme Court said, wait a second. The Constitution was around the 1930s, right? Yeah. It says equality here. Yeah. So women were paid 40% less than men. Yeah. Government, companies that still exist, you have to pay all the money late back in one check. Some 70-year-old women nearly had a heart attack opening the mail. It was 50 years of wages late. To be equal with their counterpart back then, the only country in the world that did that. And it didn't collapse. It didn't collapse.
Yeah. Yeah.
People were not happy. Women were. They were like,
yeah. These are interesting times. Okay, well, anything else anybody wants to say about this chapter?
Just about menstruation. There's always something I think about. It used to be the cycle of humankind. It's the moon cycle. And in real ancient civilizations, the one before handwriting and whatnot, it was a matriarchal society. Women were considered goddesses because they could give birth, but menstruation were guiding all the men who were going to hunt. At what time, for what reason? And it was the cradle of civilization, this whole organization around menstruation as the symbol that the child was still not coming, so more food was needed, and etc. And with the patriarchal revolution for 5,000 years ago in the Middle East, and it expanded to the world. Vikings weren't like that. Not saying they weren't sexist, but they were different. The patriarchal revolution is when to keep people in check, the local Mesopotamian kings said, okay, we used to kidnap your women so we could prostitute them and use them as reproductive assets in our city, you outside. But now you don't want to work for us. And that's the story of the Bible. Abraham left. Like, ciao, I'm going in the desert, find a new land. And this is actually based in some sort of reality at that time, which was the only way to resist against tyranny is just to leave. You could do that back then. You know, tyranny was just one city, just leave the city. And the thing is, what they did to avoid that is that they told to the patriarchs, like Abraham, okay, now you own your women in your household. You are the king in your household that I am to you. So you have my privilege trickle down to you. Please stay. And you own your wife and daughter. Own. It's no longer family. You can whip them. You can rape them. You can sell them. And that's when everything changes. And this is where menstruation becomes ugly, because here's another thing the book doesn't talk about. In Rome, menstruation, women were hidden because it meant to your enemies that she was not pregnant. Therefore, they didn't have a hair. Therefore, they could rape her to get her pregnant with their hair and inherit the land. And that's why they veiled, you know, people don't show Rome. I don't know if you ever see like graphic representations of Rome. Women are veiled. They were like, you know, oh, we descend from Rome. We're not like the Arabs. Oh, really? We all veiled women back then, even in Greece. So, you know, it's always strange when you hear about history, like great civilizations, they're always great just for men. But they're barbaric, all of them. Rome, Greece, Middle Age, Middle East, to women.
United States.
That's a civilization?
I was going to say that. Thank you.
Sorry, that was me. That was me. I thought it was a market, a huge market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never heard that particular history on menstruation, Rick.
In France,
Just
we're obsessed
story.
with sex, so we have books about every single aspect of sexual life over the centuries.
Wow.
Like, there's a book about homosexuality in the prehistoric times and proof we have and what it meant. People don't know, for example, samurais were gay, some of them. And it was tolerated. You know why? Because Spartans, you know, you saw those guys at the Capitol dressed like Spartans. You know what they did, Spartans? Women, and those were very misogynistic societies, Athens and Sparta. You're ugly. You're disgusting because you're naturally attractive, which means where you appeal to our animal side. A man being gay means we're attracted to not the animal side because at first we're not attracted, but that means we love the soul. Literally, that's what Socrates says in one book, and that's what Sparta fought about. And they were all having sex with each other. They were all lovers, so that in combat they would save each other's skin constantly. Like, you're my lover. That you don't see in a movie in 300. They were having gay sex when it was all over to fight with more courage. But, you know, it's so strange how people represent ancient civilizations. They were more interesting than we think, and also not that good. Not that great. Wow.
Yeah. One of our book group members in our other book group, Leonie, who is from Canada, she made a comment on Facebook recently regarding the insurrection. And, you know, I think she was referring to the kind of mass media response of, you know, even Joe Biden, this is not who we are. And
when Joe Biden said that, I was like,
I can't believe this is happening. And, you know, and Leonie was saying, you know, America, you know, is like a kindergartner in the world of world history. It would be, you know, it would be good if they would look at some global news or learn something, you know, from some of these more ancient.
Yeah, but you know, I would respond to her. I'm a little worried. I think the kid has some serious, is a little slow. I think the kid should get checked by a behaviorist.
Yeah, there's some kind of we're special.
Special.
I can't hear you, Venita. You're muted.
I said, Rick, you can't do that because Donald Trump actually did that. Remember?
Yep, you're right.
Or was it person, man?
No, he did. I was dumb when I saw him do that. I couldn't even believe it. It was real time. I'm like, did you just do that? You did just do that.
There's this.
Oh God.
I sent. I shared that video. You saw it, Michelle, about his talk show. Vic Berger is a guy who does videos like that, and it's all real. And he has this other video about Trump literally thinks the F-35 is invincible, and you see Donald Trump saying, Marilyn Lockheed. No, that's not her name. She's the CEO of Lockheed, but she's not Marilyn Lockheed. The Marilyn's something else. It's like the plane is stealth. Stealth. Nobody can see it. They can't see it. And then Vic Berger shows images of the F-35. No, he meant it's not detectable on the radar. Doesn't mean it's invincible. Because the pilots told me they can't see it. You know, pew pew, it's over. And he makes the sound, pew pew. And you're like, how is that not impeachable offense all the time? Like if Obama said the plane does pew pew, and people said he's got problems with his mind, he's insane. He's talking like a toddler. Impeach him.
Well, now he's been impeached a second.
Twice.
What are we gonna do? It's so. I said, life is. I'm just so used to being like this all the time. It's like, what's gonna happen? There's no tweets. There's no anything. Isn't it quiet?
It's
In spite of
break. It's a big break.
It is, but there's this whole dark web, and I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to get there. I ain't trying to know. But apparently now that these extremists are being pushed off of the Facebooks and Twitters of the world, they are retreating to what has always been one of their home bases on the dark web. So probably like
Gab.
Yeah.
It's not even on the dark web. It's not even on the dark web. They're really bad at the dark web, by the way. They're not good. They're not. And here's the interesting thing is that Twitter this is what I find extremely worrying. And I agree with some who disagrees with what the tech companies are doing. I think we need to realize that the center of power has shifted from politics to these companies. Because the big problem is that these guys made their empire over the engagement of Trump voters. Because Trump voters are fanatics. They consume content to reassure themselves that they're not living in a parallel universe. So they need an echo chamber every day. So they're more interesting for Amazon, everybody, than us, because they actually are constantly on Facebook. And they discovered that they could be legally held accountable as accessory to insurrection because if I provide to terrorists a mean of communication, I become accessory to the terrorist action.
Mm-hmm.
And Twitter and Facebook knew about hatred on the internet for the past 10 years, but they always said freedom of speech, whatever. Now that they're at liability, they decide to shut everything down. And I find that very worrying because that means that the day dictatorship comes over, they'll shut us down. And I'm not trying to defend Trump voters, but I'm just saying you should have shut them down 10 years ago. When they started saying the N-word over the internet to everybody, you should have shut them down then, not now.
Yeah. No, one of my other book group members, Karen, had a conversation going about this topic, and I was trying to make the point there that I've never seen social media including YouTube, these videos, none of it as a safe space for plotting revolution. If I were trying to plot revolution,
Yeah, you wouldn't be on the internet.
I would not be doing it on the internet.
Don't film yourself killing a cop, you idiots.
Right.
You want to get caught by the FBI, like Facebook.
Right. And I think that really the bigger problem for people on the left is that we have experienced so much betrayal within our movements that we don't really know who we can trust online or offline. But if we were gonna be planning something, to me, step one is do it offline. Don't film yourself
There's something that people don't realize.
rioting, committing a coup d'etat. That comfort level that is just.
It's insane. But that shows how social media, the biggest paradox of social media is that all of these guys say George Soros, big tech. They're the ones consuming it. They're the ones saying that big tech is censoring them while putting on Facebook QAnon thing.
Right.
Or saying YouTube is against us while So here's the thing, they're against the big man, but they work with the big man. And they complain when the big man doesn't pay them anymore. And the other thing that I find fascinating with what you were saying is really, when you think about social media and all of these things, they used like 20, 30 years ago, I have an uncle who used to work for certain services in certain countries, and a father, we travel a lot. We knew that most postal offices in the US and France, everywhere, had scanners to look through letters a little bit, very quickly. So they could identify bombs, but also writing like, we're going to kill people, or threats, with paper clips. They removed these machines because now it's all the internet. The NSA is on the internet. Their biggest problem in the past was, how do we, even during war times, how do we get the mail so we can open it, spy on them, close it, and send it back without nobody seeing that we moved anything around. I remember the mother of Tupac Shakur saying that when she was younger, she started receiving letters that seemed to have been pre-opened. Of course. So, but they removed those machines. So if you want to plot a revolution today, do it by mail. Nobody will notice. They literally delivered pipe bombs to actors from that Trump crazy we all forgot about 2 years ago. They didn't even notice them. They don't notice anthrax before it gets to, the white powder. They don't notice it before it gets to the office. How crazy is that when you think it?
Right.
But here's the thing about a revolution. The only case you go into a revolution is if you truly have no choice left. And these guys have a lot of options, but they don't want the other options. They refuse compromise. They're against democracy in its essence. They want strength over right, and more than anything, I think if they get their way. And this is one thought I had. In the past, the Civil War was between states. It was easy to identify. I'm the New York State. I will fight in this battle with my uniform. How do we know this Civil War looks more like Syrian Civil War or French Civil War? It's your neighbor. So this is what worries me this time, because
your neighbor and your family.
Yeah, their families are torn apart.
Not only are families, is there much more color diversity within families, but just among white families and by themselves, there seems to have been a lot of conflict that's
people don't talk to each other anymore
in this Trump era. Yeah,
I have friends who don't talk to their brother and mother because they became QAnon buffs, and they only do that and talk only about that. for the past 2 years, to the point that his mother told him one day, well, you've always been a coward and a traitor. His own mother on the phone. People are becoming, it's a cult. It's a cult.
Yeah.
It's like Scientology. It's a cult.
Yeah. 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 And one of the things about Scientology is they have something called a knowledge report.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of that?
You're not a very good learner. You seem to be negative.
No, right. Where you're dropping a dime on your family member, your husband, your mother, your child. If they seem to be doing something that is outside of the Scientology system, then you write a report and you tell on them. So the Scientology goes a long way to destroying your capacity to trust the people in your home.
And yourself. Because this is the greatest thing about these. They start first by destroying your self-confidence by saying, well, you feel a little stressed. And there's something that I always remember from a friend, that comes from esoteric Greek philosophy, not exoteric. At that point, it's not complicated. It's just that we always say people can't figure them out if they're not ready. And being ready means nothing being educated. You will be ready one day yourself, and you will come to in philosophy, the idea is that we always, if somebody wants us to teach them philosophy, if we become philosophers, we have to reject them, reject, never take money, never money, reject, until that person says, no, you don't understand. I want to do that. You don't get to choose. And the master then says, okay, now you're my student, and you're already the master, but whatever. The idea is that you look at all of this, the first step is really to tell somebody what you recognize as reality. You shouldn't trust it yourself. You love your mother, and your mother, you can trust her because you. But if I destroy your self-confidence first, then I can easily remove you from your mother later. When I said that maybe you remember your judgment about the past, about this little thing you had in your life? Look, it's with your mother as well. And it always starts with you're having problems like Scientology. I know the first step is they give you this 100 question thing. Then they bring you in and they berate you for hours. You're scared of water. I'm not scared of water. You're scared of water. I'm not scared. You are scared. You're a poor, scared child. Yes, I am. Yes. Of course, if you do that all the time. That's what cops used to do to young black children in the 60s. You raped the girl. You did. Huh? You raped her after 12 hours without eating and drinking.
Yeah.
Yes. Please stop it.
Yeah. It's the same techniques across.
Same techniques. Always the bullies. Always the horrible people always have the same.
Yeah. That's why I have a smidgen of I don't want to call it compassion, but reserve. I'm reserving judgment on the Republicans because I think at some level.
Too nice.
I know, but I think at some level, they have just been really terrified.
Nobody asked them to get elected. What about the oath and I'll sacrifice myself for my country? You know what? This is the horrible thought I had.
See, the beauty of that Raffensperger thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who created the recording or leaked the recording.
White House. That's what think about it. It's an aid.
But that is what you need to do when a bully is on your tail.
Yep.
No, because it's only when people have you hemmed up in a corner, in a dark corner, in the privacy, that they can berate you like that. And so, these techniques are the same across the board. And we learned didn't learn how to deal with bullies in kindergarten. And once you succumb to them, it is you'll be bringing them lunch
But look at
until you
my
graduate
personal
from
stories with
high
bullies.
school.
My personal story with bullies is that I would let them at first because, but then I would become insane. And I, I think I was a very violent child in a way. I would, like, my sister would
We can believe
call,
that, right, Venita?
no, but like my sister tells me that when I was 3 years old, the school called in France when I was 4 and said, Your little brother just beat 4 kids up very brutally. And when she arrived, she discovered I had done that because they had stolen the chocolate bread of Pierre Henry. Was a little fat and also a little shy. So I broke them, and I did that a lot. Like in the past, when I was a teenager, when I would always be calm, and if somebody would do something like bullying somebody, anybody, I would just, or me, after a while, would be like, okay. And what I discovered is that each time I did that, I got into trouble because bullies are really good at playing victim.
Oh, aren't
Incredibly
bullies?
good.
Aren't they good at playing victims?
The kid that there's this video of a kid getting bullied in school by another kid punching him, and then the kid's bigger, takes a kid, throws him to the ground. That kid got expelled.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
He protected himself against an assault, but
Right.
bullies are so good at playing victim.
Yeah.
Well, I learned from that. I had experience when I was a child with that. And I learned from that. Not only did I beat her to a pulp, but I because of that today, I don't tolerate bullying for a second. I don't tolerate it. I call them out. I grab them right by the neck. I don't mean literally, but to avoid doing that later, I call them out right away. We have bullies in our families, plenty of bullies.
Yeah.
The uncle.
Those authoritative families where, you do as I say. Well, those people grow up to be authoritarian people because that's all they know.
Mm-hmm.
And you got them in the office. I mean, they're just all around you. But when I see them, I call them out. Not me call them out, but I call them out that I'm done. I'm done with them. If I have to call you out, and I will, I'm done. Now, some people say, well, you have to understand. Now, I'm not trying to understand anything. You need to go by yourself and understand why you do what you do. That's not about me. I don't have time to waste brain energy on that. That's time in my life I'll never get back again. You need to go and think about that. Whether it's bullying me or bullying someone else. There's nothing more disgusting and small and low down than a bully. And the reason why we have that is because no one calls them out.
Yeah.
And
they will
don't you
sit
think
there.
it's also because
guess what? The passive ones, they're the real killers. They will sit there and say nothing. Well, my rule is that you're even worse than you are so bad if you sit there and you say nothing. But for them, it's like, well, I wasn't a part of it. I just sat there. You know that whole thing.
Yeah, but that's why I think we do have to, have some respect or congratulations for the Congress people who did vote today to impeach, because it's been hard for them to find their backbone.
Well, again, they're not getting any credit from me for doing the right thing. They get no credit. They get no toot. I'm not sitting there praising anybody for doing the right thing. What I will do is condemn those that didn't. You did what you're supposed to do. It's your human responsibility. And I'm tired of people praising these people
for doing the right thing.
For doing the right thing.
Chris Rock's sketch.
Society is going. It's so bad now. It's so bad, Rick, that now we have so much bad and people that don't do the right thing going on. So we actually look at people that do the right thing as being some hero.
Seeing a whole lot of people doing the right thing.
Well, that's true, but they don't get no hero status because they are doing what you should do.
Yeah.
People say they're taking a big risk. You know what?
I don't understand. These guys
is that the risk they're talking about? They're taking a political risk.
Yeah, but man,
the only benefit that benefits them So they should get praise because they might not get the
It,
benefits.
it may be, it may be a little bit more than political risk. When you're dealing with a man who sends a mob down the street screaming about hang Pence, and then they build a guillotine on the spot.
Well,
Yeah,
as
but
black
this is
folks,
this, this,
we had the same thing, and we had the same thing
But it's a
going
little
on,
bit than
and we
a
had to sit there and
political risk.
protect our, and
And
somebody had to come forward to some right. I
might not
don't know.
get
I just don't give them.
reelected.
I don't give them praise.
Yeah, no, I think that they have been
They give no
dealing.
praise.
I think that they have been dealing with more than we're really aware of as the average citizen. Like Ilhan Omar apparently has to be surrounded, by Secret Service because of the kinds of threats that she has been getting from the
they would have killed AOC, Ilan, and Richard Atlay because they're idiots and it's called the Squad, and they read it in the newspaper that they're Muslim against America and socialists.
Yeah.
They would have killed them. They would have.
Yeah.
The zip ties were not there. I'm sure there was exactly the number of zip ties they were needing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
disgusts me is that they're doing the right thing. I don't congratulate them, and I even pine them to the ground, thinking that these idiots knew. And here's what I don't understand is that proves to me that they're mediocre, even in the sense of elite. If I had been in their position, even a Republican, I would have thought, this is my chance. You show yourself up. You're not scared. You stand up. You say to the cops, I understand you're doing your job. Give me a gun. Show yourself in front of the camera. Then impeach by doing a fiery speech about conservatives, Reagan, etc., and go after not Democrats, but your colleagues. What do you become? Sure, you'll be shown at first, but in 5 years, you're the alternative. You're the hero that they forgot about. They're not bold. They have no true political cynicism, because this is something in Europe we understood. A very selfish, very clever statesman is better than somebody who believes he's for the people and is dumb. Because a selfish one will be like, if I do that, the people will kill me. I shouldn't do that. They control themselves because all they want is glory for history. They want to be remembered as these incredible people. De Gaulle, for example, could have seized full power in 1958 through not a coup. It was more subtle, but it was nearly a coup. The thing is that they were starting a coup, and if de Gaulle was named, the coup wouldn't even get to Paris. They were in the airplane. So they went to see de Gaulle, and de Gaulle took full power, executive, legislative, judiciary, for 1 year. Wrote a constitution, got it voted by the people through referendum, and then said this quote, it's not after fighting the Nazis and being in old age, I'm going to become a dictator. It kind of worked. That republic's been the most stable in 70 years, in 3 centuries. So what I'm saying is that I always have this thought: if everybody was truly selfish, there wouldn't be any war, because you don't have time for others' wars. I'm not gonna fight for you. I don't care. I want to stay home. I think the danger is what Trump is saying. I love you. That's the danger. Thinking it's an emotion of unity behind that. Hey, I mean, it's but there's another thing like 9/11 that I thought about. It's the second time Americans are shown that everything they were taught in movies about super satellites and it's all a bluff. It's all bluff. And Al Qaeda and ISIS are thinking, we're idiots. We could have stormed the Congress by wearing Trump gear.
That's what it looks like. I'm going to stop the recording.